Hey everybody, it's Brian Asbury, and I just wanted to welcome you to today's episode. If you could, like today's episode, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue to grow the developmentally speaking brand.
Today, my guest is wrestler, producer, coach. You know him. You've seen him across WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, Mr. Ace Steel. Ace, how are you, sir?
Good, Brian. How are you doing today?
Good. So far, so good. Just bought a house, so packing in between doing all
Whoa!
this.
Oh, moving is the worst for a
It's a,
good reason,
hmm
but still the worst. Yes.
it's a pain in the ass. You don't realize you have so
Yes.
much stuff until.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
So I'm gonna ask you a question you've been asked a million times. What made you want to get into professional wrestling?
Oh gosh, since I was a kid, since my parents loved wrestling. My dad was a huge wrestling fan. So growing up, I can only recall one time in life that I hated wrestling when I was at that stage when I just wanted to watch cartoons,
Hmm
and he'd be watching, Saturday morning wrestling. Oh, and I don't even know what age that is, but I have loved wrestling my whole entire life, and then like most people, you end up playing around and goofing off in your backyard or in the pool, whatever. I even did it at my homecoming show, believe it or not. Two of them. How ridiculous and what a dork I was. But it seemed I had an aptitude and hoped I did. So it was just growing up and watching. I'm from Chicago, born and bred, watching the AWA, all the characters in AWA and even a young Hulk Hogan. And then when he disappeared, I didn't understand territories. Like, where did he go? But then we had the Road Warriors come in, and guys like that, like, oh, just
hmm
great stuff.
At what age did you decide that this was something you were going to truly pursue? And then how did your beginnings start?
So probably about 16 years old. There used to be an organization called the WFIA and the Wrestling Fans International Association, and they used to back in the day. You could find the magazines where they would piggyback off a show and give awards out and stuff like that, right?
Mhm.
And they had an event where they allowed, this sounds ridiculously crazy, but they allowed people to come and use the ring and wrestle. So they basically took us in the ring at 16 years old, made sure we wouldn't kill ourselves, and we got to have a match and entrances and everything. Couldn't tell you how much money we spent to do this thing, but I did it. I had boots. I had bought boots, from Bill Ash down in Arkansas, which is later I found out is Bill Ash. And my first pair of boots I had when I was 16 years old. So from that, there's another thing very similar with the WFIA in Chicago itself with Windy City Pro Wrestling did one, or at least it was at the Windy City School. It wasn't exactly their baby, but Windy City at the time was on Sports Channel, which Sports Channel was huge in Chicago. And on Sports Channel, I'd watch Florida wrestling. I'd see all kinds of different wrestling, but this is big time on Friday nights at 10 p.m. And kind of in the wrestling boom at the end of the '80s, you would see, I know Paul Heyman booked there for a little bit. He brought in the original Midnight Express. You'd see Bruiser Brody in there. The Battle of the Bam Bams, Terry Gordy against Bigelow. Like this would all be on the TV, and I could go train at this place making this happen. So yeah, that's it just kind of laid itself out for me. It's like it rolled out the shitty red carpet for me and said, "Come on, kid."
So how was when you were training and then you started working, did you stay in that Chicago area? And how was it back then? Because it's not as easily as accessible today to get work, I would say.
Well, so I would beg to differ.
Okay.
Back then, I didn't realize I was what independent was. That word didn't wasn't used yet.
hmm
Maybe outlaw, but not even outlaw because we had guys like Ken Patera coming in, Mr. Electricity Steve Regal, um, who had fame in AWA. So there's name stars. Iron Sheik came in repeatedly, so you had name stars working these shows. So we knew no different,
hmm
and they ran county fairs. I mean, they were good shows. So I wrestled in Chicago for the first 2 years of my existence in wrestling. And then, as luck would have it, my shoot job at the time, I'd gotten hired by a company, and this kind of plays into Florida a little bit where I live now. They moved me to Florida for 3 months for job training, and then it kicked me off to Kansas City. In those 3 months of job training, I wrestled at the Tampa Sportatorium, not knowing the magnitude of what that place was. I was just in some old beat up place on North Albany down there in Tampa, and I had no idea that that was the place where all the legendary Tampa TV had taken place. I was just down there for a couple months, but I wasn't 21 at the time, so I couldn't go out to bars. I couldn't go
Hmm.
hang out. So I hollered, picked up the phone, called my mom, said, "Can you send me my wrestling gear?" She's like, "What are you gonna do with your wrestling gear?" I'm like, "I found a place I could wrestle." So that just kicked it off. And then everywhere I went, I tried to pick up wrestling, but it wouldn't be later till I moved back to Chicago when we started the Steel Domain that I really wrestled a little more around Chicago.
So how was that starting that and then wrestling back in Chicago? Because Chicago's always been a hotbed for wrestling. Always is,
I
always will be.
hotbed for the big promotions, like great
Hmm.
crowds, right? But the
Hmm.
independents,
No.
not so much, not so much. So really, what brought me back to Chicago was because there was not enough wrestling. I was 25 years old at this point. There was not enough wrestling in Kansas City at the time. And lo and behold, as luck would have it, Harley Race opens up his school of promotion a couple of years, like within the time frame that I moved back to Chicago, he opens up. Times would have been different. He had opened up early. I probably would have migrated to him first,
Hmm.
and I come back to him later. But it was once a month, if that, and I was scraping to find work, and I wasn't getting the work I wanted because I really wanted this business. So moved back to Chicago. We opened up the Steel Domain, and again, the hotbed of Chicago wasn't that hot. We were driving to Minnesota to find. We found a place that paid well, good work, in Minnesota, known for, such a rich wrestling history.
Hmm.
Plus, we got video footage. They were filming it for local cable access. So that was the best we could do at the time. But still, we had footage of what we were doing, and that was hard to come by at the time.
Seeing stuff like that, like trading tapes, sorry, and
Yeah.
getting out there like that. How been that must have been so beneficial to be able to do something like that. And then like was that how you networked back then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, again, a forgotten time because everything at the click of a
Hmm.
snap of a finger is already on Instagram or YouTube by the time you get home or take your boots off. Um, we'll, we'll have to throw props, and I know Punk inducted Dave Prazak into Independent Hall of Fame. Dave Prazak gets a lot of props from us and a lot of praise
Hmm.
because he, on his own, with his connections, took our tapes, would make videos for us, would splice things together, send matches out for all of us at the Steel Domain, and would help get us work. I remember the day he asked me to work for IWA Mid South, and I'm like, it's nothing but hardcore garbage. And he goes, no, 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 no. They want wrestlers. I want wrestlers. And one of my first shows, I wrestled Shark Boy and Chris Hero. So I'm like, okay, I don't have to, light myself on fire, which I would never do anyway. But give me a few years, maybe we'll get there. But you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
and Dave was the one that kind of helped push us out there. And then you'd hear from other promoters, and you go work. And then once you start, branching out, like he helped Pierce out a lot before we did. So Pierce and I, though we wrestled the same in Chicago and Minnesota and around the domain, he would branch off different places too. So we were it was really Prazak that was just kind of
Hmm.
pumping it for us. And he would essentially manage us a lot of the time. He was my manager for quite a long time. And we do the Stan Lane bit with like they did with Cornette. And he introduced me and I had him sit on the buckle and introduce him as the Sausage King of Chicago, uh, just a nod to Ferris Bueller. But yeah, it was kind of crazy. That's how it worked. I
Hmm.
mean, tape trading is kind of what got me to Ring of Honor. The nod, for Punk to tell Gabe Sapolsky, well, there's guys here, and he's like, I don't know anyone in Chicago, and he's like, well, my trainer Ace is here. Never seen Ace. I
Hmm.
happen to be working a show. They took a tape back to him. I mean, that's exactly how it all works. That's how it did work.
Hmm.
But still, it was the independence was just a wild thing. I dare say a little bit easier, just not to go full force and contradict you and play devil's advocate.
Hmm.
I say it's a little easier to get out there and get on shows. I mean, to find quality shows that has all the things you're looking for. I mean, it makes a difference to find good lighting, good
Hmm.
footage, the venue, how it looks. A
Hmm.
lot of things can be done with lighting. I worked for Dave Marquez as a producer and as a wrestler over the years, and he does the most with a small building that you just couldn't imagine with just the move of some lights, putting some curtains here.
Hmm.
The guy can make a closet look like a freaking studio.
Yeah, I used to work for Gay back. I was on the production team during the Dragon Gate USA days,
Oh,
and
okay.
there was always like when him and Sal would do stuff like that. There was a building in Milwaukee. I mean, it was small, but like the lighting and it was just an intimate setting. And wrestling like that, I liked too. Like seeing that
Oh
close
yeah.
action hitting like that, just the presentation of something that they could make look bigger than what it was.
Yes, indeed. I
Hmm.
mean, again, yeah, they did a great job. I mean, Chicago Ridge, where we ran most of all of our Ring of
Hmm.
Honor in Chicago, until I don't know if they ever got out of there, if they kept running at a later stage, like as years went on. I'm not sure how that worked. But Chicago Ridge was a great place. I've watched, like, recently gone back and looked at some footage that I've
Hmm.
used in like my videos. There's some really cool shots of that. Just, I know it's very simplistic where you don't really see the crowd and all that stuff, but I love if
Hmm.
the ring is well lit and you can see all the action. That makes the wrestlers look better. I'm just old school that way. I love that look. I love the house show feel. But that way that crowd like just felt into it. There's also something to be said when there's not a lot of lights on you and the focus isn't on you, so you don't feel like such a goof going, hey, you don't want everyone to look at you, like if you're clapping and cheering. So I love that atmosphere. I love that.
Same. So how was those early years with Ring of Honor? So I grew up in Seymour, Indiana, so I'm like right there by OVW, IWA. So
Okay.
I got to see all that plethora of talent come, through there. And
Yep.
then when Ring of Honor started, and so how was your early years there?
I loved Ring of Honor. I mean, we all had a chip on our shoulder in a way to show the world what we were about. None of us thought, I guarantee, maybe there's some that have a different idea, but I never thought I would ever, excuse me, have any interaction with WWE.
Hmm.
It was the land of the giants. They were all huge. I was never tall. We didn't have muscle heads. You had a couple of good sized guys that came through, but we were all just we were all different machines at that point, like the machines of wrestling, and we all loved wrestling, and we were the guys that loved the Guerreros, the Malinkos and that ilk, and of course Regal and guys like that, maybe that British style and the hard hitting style, what we thought was the Japanese style until we all got to wrestle the Japanese. But we just all had, I just feel like a lot of us were machines, and it was tough competition to get on those shows.
Hmm.
Like, just look at all the people that worked those early days, man. I'll pull myself out. It is a who's who of who's still in this industry or
Hmm.
who's behind the scenes. Now I'm behind the scenes getting to do this stuff. And I'll hear a guy like Adam Cole say, I was in the crowd for the Cage of Death CZW versus ROH, and I'm like, what? You were in the crowd? Like, yeah, you have that now. You have those people in wrestling. So
Hmm.
it was just really cool. It was really cool. We were. It was very. If there was anything akin to like ECW was in a way, we were pulling that off
Hmm.
and getting the crowds coming in. It was good.
Hmm.
The one I mentioned, the Chicago Ridge, the first show that piggybacked on WWE on a WrestleMania was a Ring of Honor show, and I vividly recall Gabe walking to the back and saying, "Are you guys ready to open up the show with the first crowd of 1,000 that we've ever had?" And that just ooh. And I
Hmm.
think Lance Storm, who I work with now, I think he wrestled Brian on that. I think, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, what a hell of a show! What a crowd! I mean, to be able to do that, and we helped that grow. We
Hmm.
helped build that. All of us did. Everyone on that card did.
And like shows like that are like a permanent staple now for WrestleMania weekend.
Exactly. Look at all the people. I open for bookings. How many shows? I got this venue. This venue, rents out at this time. They get out, clean the ring. Other people like. I haven't even seen the magnitude. I read online. I haven't been to one in years to see how crazy that is.
Hmm.
I'm kind of scared of it actually. Like just to see all of that in one place.
So like sometimes I'll cover events for WWE and I'll go out there and do press. So I had
Uh-huh.
another guy reach out to me. They're from Louisville and they're going and they're like, well, they give me a list of stuff. I'm like, there's so much more to that week than what you
Oh
outside of
yeah,
WWE. That's like the less. There
yeah.
is show after show, event after event. Like it's not a I'm flying in Friday night. It's a whole week process.
Yeah, well, like how it's opened up for Access all week
Hmm.
and all that stuff. I've been to an Access before. I came to Mania in 2017, but I only did WWE things. My nephew at the time, we took him to WrestleMania, and went around Access, did that stuff, and then hid. I didn't go to a WrestleCon. I didn't do any of that. I didn't want to be near that. But it's going to be a necessary evil now. If having the school, I'm going to have to get out there and do stuff like this. But yeah, just the magnitude of all that. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm sure there's stuff Monday through Friday with just regular independents, aren't there?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, and I think it's really cool
Hmm.
because back when we did it, we all thought like we're gonna run WrestleMania weekend, and then sure as shit, 1,000 people show up. We're like, wow, and then that's a pretty neat thing. It's a
Oh,
pretty neat thing to have been involved in, and a cool thing in history. At least I think for all of us, if we sat down and thought about it.
absolutely. So, what was the moment in your career where you started to realize that your name was out there and you were starting to get all that momentum behind you?
Gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I had like an exact in my head. I always just figured I was working towards something.
Hmm.
Um, Probably when I got to Japan. Probably when I went to Noah. I got a chance to go to Noah, and I had already. I say that, but I had worked TNA already, so it probably was working TNA
Hmm.
like in the early days, like right when they started. That's probably where the name got out there more and more. And then I did Ring of Honor, but didn't have a long stay in TNA. I didn't understand how to work television, so at least I had that exposure. And then I still worked, but I wasn't featured prominently really anywhere. Then when I got to Japan, I felt like maybe my stock had risen, and by that point, going to Japan, I had already been with Harley Race for quite a while, a few years working his shows, and then getting his stamp of approval where he became, the guy that sent me to Japan. He was my liaison there. He was my agent to get me over there. So I was dealing with him, regularly all the time, really, and then having someone like Regal. When I would go, I would still go do enhancement work at WWE. It's a hell of a
Hmm.
payday. And you'd show up and he'd look at me and he'd go, oh, I've been watching and reading. And I'm like, really? Like, I had no idea. He keeps his finger on the pulse.
Hmm.
Even then, when he didn't have anything to do with developmental, he just looked around at who was out there. And since the moment I met him, he's always like kind of followed where my name has popped in, which has served me great over the years, like such a great, compliment for that to happen. But so
Hmm.
I would say probably the Noah stuff really did it.
Having Regal's stamp of approval is an amazing thing to have.
It's a blessed thing in this business. And the cool thing for me is I shoot for the unsolicited compliment,
Hmm.
like I hope everyone wants to be complimented, right? But I was never one, and I'm not one to walk up and go, how did I do? Like it's what can I learn? Feedback, please. Where can I do this? Where can I do that? Help me out here so I can get better. Like I always need to get better.
Hmm.
And even when I got to work him a couple of times, like he picked me to work him at a couple of Harley shows, I was out of the business really. Like I wasn't so far that he couldn't pull me back in, but I wasn't in the greatest shape. The second match I was, but he would just slow me down
Hmm.
because I hadn't had the pacing at that point anymore. But he would just slow me down. He'd just sit his ass on me and just kind of lean on me. I'm like, oh god, I get it, I'm slowing down. But just yeah, having someone like him endorse me, Harley endorse me, having Harley's endorsement, which is why I put him on the school.
Hmm.
But we'll talk about that in a bit. But like, yeah, those things. That's such a great thing for me. That was the one thing that I realized, even after having the school, that I didn't have one person that was really pushing for me. This business is who you know, who you
Hmm.
make connections with. I didn't have that one person that could open a door for me or tell me to go knock on the proper door or just any type of real mentorship. So between Regal and Harley, Harley being the first and helping me out, like Harley stamp really was the thing that got me moving.
Hmm.
So,
What led to your time in OVW?
um, a farce. It's funny that I just did a workshop at Hybrid Wrestling in San Antonio. Great school down there, and this workshop was all about television production and camera angles and what do I do in a day, things like that, just to kind of clue them in on TV because they were independent wrestlers. Um, so the story is, so 2006, I'm as a complete of a wrestler as I think I can be.
Hmm.
Body, mechanics, like I'm as good as I'm going to get at that point until someone takes me to a higher level. I've been working Japan a few years. WWE's got, as far as I know, there's an interest. Ted DiBiase graciously was trying to help me out because his boys were in Harley's. They
Hmm.
were in Harley's camp at that time, so I was helping them train for their first match. And Ted DiBiase was really trying to just farm me out and try to get me on. Like he liked my work. He genuinely liked my work, and he saw me in a match. Basically, what happened was I had a match with Lance Cade. I showed up in Kansas City to work, and Trevor Murdoch and Lance Cade were just not. They were teaming. They just happened to not have a tag match that night.
Mm-hmm.
And Trevor looked at my name. He said, "Take Ace." I'm like, "Oh, I just want to eat catering." So I went out and we had a match. And when I came back, Teddy DiBiase shook my hand. He said, "Thank you very much for giving me something entertaining to watch." And I'm like, "Wow, thank you." And then he continued because he was down a lot because his boys were down there. So he'd
Mm-hmm.
just be sitting in my gym talking to me about all kinds of stuff. And it just didn't happen. So I was like, well, all right, WWE's not going to happen. And what I mean, what I said before, size wise, I had stood next to a guy like Benoit and like Eddie, and I'd already seen Eddie before, because we had a great interaction with him at IWA Mid South. But looking around, I was like, I am just as big as these guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I could do this, but then nothing happened. So beginning of '07, I get the call to do the Donald Trump gig. So again, this is part of my speech. I'm like, you've got to be open. I was telling them how comedy may not take you to, you're going to hit a ceiling very early with comedy, but to be a serious wrestler and mechanic and have all that in your back pocket ready to go. Well, then when the time came for someone to ask you to do comedy, that you could pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
That may not be your full calling, but that's exactly what happened. They called me to do a comedy spot, and it was, Vince's brainchild at that point to further the whole storyline that went to WrestleMania that year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I dare I say knocked it out of the park for what was needed, and in front of a crowd in Scott Trade Center in St. Louis, like in millions on TV. And if you watch it back, which some have maybe watched it back recently because they didn't know that was me, or they remember it, they're like, "That was you," and now they see it's me and they're just laughing hysterically. But to be able to pull that off and to think of how many millions had to sit through that, think of the commercial time, the
Mm-hmm.
people that are in the back that have been trying and trying and trying to get TV exposure, and they put that on there, like, and that's what happened. I hit a home run with it, and I was hired a week later to go to OVW. I went to Deep South first, and then it shut down, and then I ended up in OVW.
How long were you in Deep South? Long enough to see how things were.
Long enough
Was
to
the
see the demise.
Yeah, was the writing on the wall when you got there?
No, I didn't know.
No.
I didn't know. I didn't know any of the ongoings because I didn't know. I got down there. I'm gonna say it might have been just a month. I think it was only like a month. Like I went down. I had a knee injury, and I did wrestle I think three matches that I wrestled. I wrestled a young Kofi Kingston before, like they were figuring out his gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
I wrestled Ray Gordy, and I wrestled a guy from Chicago named Keith Walker. And believe it or not, and I am a lifelong heel. They made me a babyface, so I'm stuck wrestling baby faces. So I'm the tweener. All these people have already wrestled down there, except maybe the exception of Keith. But the other two, Ray Gordy's gimmick is built in. So is Kofi's. Like they've watched him in Georgia
Mm-hmm.
all this time. So um, as far as writing being on the wall, I don't know. I didn't spend a lot of time in the office. Dr. Tom was down there at the time. So I didn't know. I don't even know if he knew the inner workings the way they were going. And then we showed up one night and they just tore the place apart. Next thing you know, we're at a Hooters having a beer and everyone's talking about how they're open in Florida. So that's literally. I was having a beer with Brad Armstrong, my favorite wrestler in the world. He's yucking up, he's cutting up, telling jokes, and I'm just amazed this is happening with Brad Armstrong. But I'm like, okay, where does my life go? And I ended up going to OVW because my home at the time was in the middle of Missouri, where Harley's school was. So I just went to OVW.
How was OVW?
Um, Rough for me because I was in about 15 years at that point. So learning hip tosses and doing that type of stuff was not what I was in for.
Mm-hmm.
I needed more, put me in an advance. I needed to know how to get out of there and go to television. That to me is what I needed. I didn't need to learn about territories. And I love territories, but the territory system is dead. Tell me stories about the territories. And I love Danny Davis. He is awesome. I really wish I picked his brain more
Mm-hmm.
because what I've learned in the future is to, at this time in my world, is learn the art of looking like I'm very, very busy. So nobody bothers you. Um, but he's great. He was always great. He was always great. I wish I just picked his brain more. That's all. But it really is, you were stuck in no man's land, And I've said this story recently is that I ran into Ricky Steamboat, who I met quite a bit, down at Harley's and had done stuff with. And Steamboat was an agent on the road at the time, and he's like, "Hey, you still down at Harley's?" I go, "I'm in OVW. I work for the same company you do, and you don't know." There's such a disconnect,
Hmm.
such a disconnect. Bodies are over here. The upper, they didn't have a clue. Not like now, not like NXT. Like the fingers on the pulse.
Hmm.
The finger's been, I think since FCW, the finger's been on the pulse, as far for far as what I can see, and even more so now with NXT, of course, with the Performance Center. You know,
Hmm.
it's a lot easier to see people instead of just, you know, like who do we have to throw in this gimmick? We need a tag team. Send
Hmm.
us one. Stuff like that.
I've always said that about that time period. There was so many. There's a lot of people in developmental now, but back then it felt like, oh, he didn't work. Get rid of him. We'll try it with this. We'll try something with this guy. As to where now longevity is the key.
Yeah,
Before it
yeah,
was no, we've got 35 other guys. We'll make something happen
yeah.
for that
Exactly.
specific like that time period right there.
Yeah. I think it also helps who's in the office for you as well.
Hmm.
Because the guy who played Simon Dean, Supernova, Mike Bucci, he was a proponent of mine. He's the one who helped me get hired, and he put me in the Trump position. And at that time, and he hired a bunch. There's a lot of us that got hired, kind of like someone say, Tommy Dreamer was the one that got them hired back in the day.
Hmm.
But he was a proponent for me. So when he left office, new regime comes in. Just how it goes, just how the cycle goes in business, in the business as it is. I just suffered that cycle, much like I did the last time with NXT. It's just who you're around and who you're associated with. And at that point, they're like, nope, 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 nope. We want this kind of athlete in there, or we want athletes now. Just how they
Hmm.
flip it and turn and go. We need a lot of athletes now. Oh, wait a minute. We need wrestlers to help teach the athletes, and then
Hmm.
the happy medium. But yeah, I think it's who's in the office to help you move along. And if you get caught out in out in the open, you're just waiting to get picked off. See ya, we don't need you.
So did you feel like they gave you an opportunity in OVW, or were they just you're another wrestler? We're gonna take you through.
OV, I think OVW gave me an opportunity, but here's the issue. The only issue I would say is that I came off knee surgery, and I
Hmm.
probably I came back too fast.
Hmm.
My knee still wasn't 100%. It was probably 80%. Now that's on me. I figured out how to do springboards with a knee brace. I figured out how to wrestle with the knee brace. And I didn't look bad. I had a good build, but it's your overall appearance. So I don't know that I got enough time to really get over. It's not that I wasn't used properly. If you look back at probably cage match, I think I had quite a few matches where I got the W, which
Hmm.
is what. So that's how they put me and put me out to the world. But I didn't have a gimmick. I didn't have. I had no direction as far as what we could do with me. Um, so, and a lot of that's on me too, but also that's probably the hindrance of my career to figure out what to do with myself.
Hmm.
I'm trying five different things and trying to be characters because they say that's what they want, and then all of a sudden they turn around and go, "Well, we want the real you." Like, well, help me figure out the real me, and it's hard to get over in some environments. It's
Hmm.
hard to get over when you're wrestling sometimes lesser than talent because you have to guide them and lead them through, as opposed to give me Matt Seidel when he walked into developmental, and he and I we're
Hmm.
clicking because we not only because we've worked before, but I've got a credible contender when I work Sean Spears or Paul Burchill. We're always going to knock it out of the park,
Hmm.
but I don't always have that same person on the opposite side of the ring, so it makes a difference. I
Hmm. So after your release came, you didn't slow down.
say. Dare I say, I was burned pretty bad, but I did work. I did work that year. I didn't realize in '08 when I got released, I did work a lot more than I thought I did.
Hmm.
But yeah, I went back to Ring of Honor too because Adam Pearce changing of the guard happened.
Yep.
That's probably I don't know where you came into touch with Gabe because Dragging It it might be pretty soon after that. But
What was that oh
Gabe
nine
had
2010, I think.
okay, yeah, I don't remember when Adam exactly left, but there was the changing of the guard where Gabe had left, and then Adam became the booker of Ring
Hmm.
of Honor. And then when I was open and available, he's like, "You got to come work Chicago." And then he put me in the spot that obviously people would like to see me. And then he was like, "Okay, I need you for the cage match next month." I'm like, "What?" You know, Next thing I know, I'm just wrestling a bunch of shows. So it may not seem like I slowed down, but I really did considerably. Like wrestling broke my heart at that point. Like my heart
Mm-hmm.
was broken, and it's kind of like a careful what you wish for, because you always want to be, hey, I want to be nominated. And I want that WWE contract to see what I could do, and it didn't work out. So yeah, I would dare say I was heartbroken without finally being able to realize like, hey, it's wrestling, man. Just keep moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep going. But again, things happen for a reason, and the way my career goes, I am I'm in a spot by the time it gets here
Mm-hmm.
that things just work out great. So yeah, if you look up the cage match thing, I probably did wrestle more than I'm thinking.
Did you have? I know that's a tough thing to go through because
Hmm.
you feel like what's next. What was next? What did you want to do next? Because there was a bad period there where your heart was broke.
Yeah,
Did you think that you would deep dive back in?
no, never, never. I was hired 34 years old, so I'm already about too late for them in a lot of respects.
Hmm.
Honestly, today's age, if you'd asked them 2 years ago at NXT, 34 would be too old. Now it's not too old. Now they
Hmm.
recognize someone that could lead a younger generation and possibly be a star still,
Hmm.
someone we just haven't tapped into. And a smaller individual, not a gigantor, not a gigantic muscle head, right?
Hmm.
Or just someone of stature, someone who's not 6 foot tall. Um, so at 34 years old, hired, fired, probably I think I turned 35. I looked at my world and thought, I better get back into the shoot world before I'm playing with wrestling so long, and I don't want to be the guy standing there with it just didn't work out. And so I jumped back into the real world. I have a telecommunications degree, and I took that to the next level and was successful in telecommunications. And until for about 10 years, I decide I'd been asked by Regal if I wanted to guest coach.
Hmm.
And mind you, he's not the first one. I was asked probably for a good 5 year stretch if I wanted to be a guest coach. And I kept turning it down, turning it down, turning it down. Mind you, I also would wrestle sporadically. I
Hmm.
never really stopped. I'd go back and wrestle for Harley just because I love to see him. But I never did like another Japanese tour, though I was asked immediately after I'd gotten let go from WWE, like probably a year or so later. I was asked if I wanted to go back to Japan. Like someone inquired, and I just said, "Nah, I'm doing this now. Thank you very much." All hindsight, not spilled milk. You're kind of like, maybe if I did. Hindsight for the career, I probably could have humped it and kept going and been okay. But you never know. I again didn't want to be one of the casualties of our industry and have nothing to show for it.
Hmm.
So yeah. So anyway, so it comes back around full circle. Hey, would you like to do this? Let's see if it's a good fit for you, good fit for us, And I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I pulled the trigger on it.
How was that experience?
Oh, it was great. I love working at the performance center. Well, here's the thing. I love coaching.
Hmm.
I love coaching. I love coaching more than I love wrestling, than actually wrestling in the ring. Like I love it because I get to hand everything that I've got or every little tip, trick of the trade to someone and hope that it works out for them. May not always work out, but when something gets used to get that feedback from that person or to help them on their first match being televised, even if it's just on a 205 or now it's level up,
Hmm.
like I've had a couple of those. Like, what do I do, coach? I'm like, well, let's talk about your match. Let's piece it together. And then they come back and it was either a success, not a success, but think the things that go well, and then they just thank me for helping them get through that process because this is nerve wracking.
Hmm.
I remember it being nerve wracking for me, and I didn't have anyone. I'm not going to say I coddled the person, but I was like, okay, hey, we got this. We're in this together
Hmm.
because I got to call the match, and if I'm the shits calling the match, and your match is completely shitty, like they'll look at me and go, why did you put that together? Why did you help them put that together? Doesn't matter that I wasn't in a ring to do the chin lock for them. It
Hmm.
still kind of falls upon you in a lot of ways. Um, but I love it, and my time there, getting to wake up and coach and go in the morning, and the guys I got to work with the top coaches in the world. Never in my wildest dreams would I think I'd be working with Robbie Brookside, one of the best British wrestlers ever. Norman Smiley, another like phenomenal wrestler. then eventually turning into working with Terry Taylor, Fit Finley, you name it, Steve Carino of all people. I've done Steve all these years and work with Steve, and to be there having a conversation with Shawn Michaels about just
Hmm.
regular stuff. Like you have to look at Shawn Michaels as a regular guy because that's how he wants to be treated because that's what he is.
Hmm.
And he puts aside all that. It was a great experience. I loved it, and I was back for pandemic hit a lot of us in a different way, but I went right back after. It was just a short hiatus, and but it was kind of good in a way because I got to go back out and see the indie scene a little bit
Hmm.
and get a flavor for what's out there, and then also come back in and go, okay, I see what's going on out there in the world. When we do tryouts, I know what we're getting. I know what's happened. I'm trying to figure out what happened to wrestling. Like things are a lot different than they
Hmm.
used to be, and no, man, it just really put my love for coaching back in focus.
Is there any particular thing that you got to do as a coach there that sticks out more than others? Like any people you got to work with or matches you helped put together?
Oh yeah, I got to work with Grayson Waller from the ground up, from his being his first coach, and he graciously put me over on a podcast or interview site. I don't know are we a podcast? What are we? Everything's got video, right?
Yeah.
This digital interview. He graciously put me over, when Punker came in, so it kind of opened up that was very sweet of him, and I have an endorsement of his on my school wall.
Hmm.
I've got Punk, Adam Pierce, Matt Bloom, Grayson Waller, and working with Waller from the ground up. And you probably won't mind me saying that they hired a guy from Australia. He had some fame over there locally, but I don't know that they looked at him and thought that they would have what they have now.
Hmm.
You know, he main evented against Cody a couple weeks ago. I just watched him on my DVR work Randy Orton the other night. Like he in theory are killing it as heels, and he's on TV every week. And he's got the gift of gab and he handles it. Like it's cool for me to have had. I'm not sure if I had his first match on 205, but I had a lot of his matches, and to help him construct things, like we learned together.
Hmm.
And I didn't like to see someone if there was something in his match that they butchered or something just said, you're still figuring things out. Like I didn't like I wouldn't leave him out to dry. I would say, hey, I was a producer. Let's learn together. Let's figure this stuff
Hmm.
out. And getting to work with him, working with Steiner, with Bron Breaker, working with Tony D'Angelo, um, these guys to see that they're still working. The Creed brothers. The Creed brothers are phenomenal dudes. They've got such heart, you
Hmm.
know. And I say this when you have extra ring at the performance center, and I turn around and I got a ring full of all of who I'm talking about. I turn it because it's open ring. You jump in and work with any coach you want to that day. That's exactly what it means. And I turn around and I got a ring full of all these guys. They want to be in my practice. When they move them or they want to be in my training, I should say, not practice. We're not practicing anything. We are training. You move them to another ring, but they still ask coach, can I come do cardio? They know the cardio that I'm running. They know the drills I'm running. Coach, can I come work in your class? I don't have a class that meets up with mine. Sure, ask your coach as long as that's cool with them. And usually, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, they're like, "Yeah, go learn more.
Hmm.
That's what you're here to do." Like we had such a great like cast of coaches that everyone's there to help you learn. If you have the aptitude to soak it in, it's amazing. So yeah, Waller, Joe Gacy, um, Waller, Braun Breaker, an early Tiffany Stratton worked a little bit with her,
Hmm.
JC Jane, Gigi Dolan. Like I would work with all these different people. Like they're all great people. They're all great kids, and they have hunger.
Hmm.
So it's Javier. I can't say his last name. Something big bad Javi body, whatever the hell he does. I don't know, but he's one they hired from somewhere and came in and just
Hmm.
he's learned. He's still there and he's absorbing everything. I remember the day when we were in the ring and he wanted to learn what a comeback was. Like, what's the cadence of a comeback, the bump and feed. Like, all these people, like, great people to work with. Great people to work with.
It seems like now, with the way the performance center is now, as to where maybe it was 10, 15 years ago in developmental life, when they're training somebody that doesn't necessarily have a wrestling background, there's more tools to help that person achieve what they're trying to achieve, more people to
Uh,
work with.
yeah, again, I don't know how it was 10, 15 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and I also think that they're looking for they have more people that are of that ilk. You know,
Hmm.
when Adam Pearce was a coach in 2014, he had a bunch of independent wrestlers and very little of the people that have never wrestled before.
Hmm.
You know, so he had like FTR in his class, stuff like that. And now you have it just as luck would have it. I didn't have super brand new people unless I was working with Robbie. They go through Robbie first, and then they
Hmm.
branch out from there. I got all the guys who worked the independents right away. I had Carmelo Hayes. I was his first coach there. I had guys like that. I had Anthony Henry, Anthony Green. Those guys were sent to me almost like the only one I didn't get Kurt Stallion until the end, but I worked with him a lot on 205.
Hmm.
But in my class, though, he wasn't thrown in that till the end, and unfortunately, he had a bum hand at the time. I think he broke his hand. But yeah, I would dare say that the tools are there for sure for these
Hmm.
people. They've structured it so they can get the most out of this wrestling college of sorts.
When your release came from the performance center, you went to AEW. What was the difference? Because they don't have a school. So
Right.
what was the difference? Do you prefer being hands on with the talent in the ring and helping them, or like just go like producing the matches?
So producing came about, and I'm glad it did because it's served me great throughout my
Hmm.
career. Since I got back into it, Adam Pearce and William Regal were both again proponents for me. You got to learn this. You got to learn this. Got to have this tool in your toolbox. Look how it served Adam because he was a coach, and that's just where his path went.
Hmm.
Um, I enjoy producing with input. Like I like giving a little tweak or helping. I love coaching with a hands-on
Hmm.
approach in a lot of ways. I got to help when I think this is funny when we see, oh, this person produced this match, this match, this match. That doesn't always mean you had all the input in the world.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that. But you're calling camera angles, you're doing this, you're doing that. So it is subjective to the match.
Hmm.
A match like the chain match between MJF and Punk, I had a lot of input on how I wanted to see things.
Hmm.
As opposed, and I still do that. Like, hey, guys, can I see this from here? Or ladies, can you do this on the back corner? Blah 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 stuff like that. But no, I really love having a more hands-on approach. I love the fact that I had training with someone for the for how many ever weeks, and then hey, we get to take what we've worked on and put that in the match. So um, that's what I enjoy. And so now it's a mix of that. Sometimes
Hmm.
you've got for instance, you got a pro like Mike Bailey, Speedball Mike Bailey. His mind is ready. The minute
Hmm.
he sees what he's got, his mind is racing. He'll
Hmm.
ask opinions and questions, but he's already running through, and he helps me out by kind of dumbing it down for me and saying, "Okay, coach, you know, Ace will be on this side of the ring. We'll be on this side of the ring, and this." So I'm already like, "Thank you. You've already cut out that question for me," and stuff like that. So I really love a hands-on approach, but also when you see masters at their craft,
Hmm.
it's an awesome thing to see.
Absolutely. Is that what led to you opening the school now?
Again, yeah, the love for coaching. So even during the AEW days, I would there was a ring sitting at Universal, and I would go down on Mondays and Fridays if our week allowed it, and I would train. I
Hmm.
would coach because people asked me and wanted to get in the ring, and I didn't have I had some newer people, and I had people like Serena Deeb and Mercedes Martinez that wanted to come train. Not that they needed further learning,
Hmm.
but it also helps jog the brain. That's why you get in there to roll around. You come up with something new. Otherwise the wheels aren't turning. But also just to let me coach them. They respected me, and that's such praise to me that in itself is that because I coached with Sarita at the Performance Center, but she turned around and I produced a lot of her matches and Mercedes matches. And to get to work with and train with them, and then come back and go, let's do this in this match, let's do that, let's do this person could probably do this better than this. But to go in and coach, yes, that's what led to me. That and working with the place I mentioned, hybrid, going and seeing how kids really absorb this. And I
Hmm.
say kids because they're all kids at this point to me. Geez, you're probably a complete kid to me too. Um, but getting to help them and seeing the light bulb turn on, that is what it's all about. That's exactly what it's all about at this stage. And I'm excited to, at the foundation, bring somebody from the ground up, or take somebody and tighten up their skills and really show them a different avenue maybe they didn't think about before, or get their wheels turning, things like that.
Where's the school located?
School's in Winter Park, Florida, so the Orlando area. It's down the street from the Performance Center. That just happened. That was happenstance. That it's very close, but also, there's going to be people that come through, and we've had this at tryouts that want to get ready for a tryout. That and I can run them through that. I assisted in many a tryout at that place. See what they do for you. I can show you all that. Um, but it's in a perfect spot, not far from the airport. Um, Coming, if you're from overseas and you want to come for a short stint, we can accommodate that. But also, come on in. And I've had this question a lot, like, are there going to be advanced classes? And I'm like, well, advanced is very subjective in our industry at this point. But you're coming to get my flavor of wrestling, and I branded it with Harley Race on top because Harley Race taught me so much by what he does in the ring, by how he operates in this business, and I'm bringing him along with me on this journey, like branding it that, because all the things I've learned over all these years and all the mentors I've had, like I'll turn around and as Rip Rogers would say, the great Rip Rogers would say, I didn't come up with this shit. I'm just regurgitating it. And that's exactly right. You're from Seymour,
Yep.
I'm sure you've crossed paths with Rip.
Oh,
It's what he says. He gives 100%, says, I'm just regurgitating what I've learned and giving that to you. Well, this is my flavor, my stamp. So whether you've got some experience, come down and hone your skills. Let's sharpen them up. Let's sharpen them. I've now worked for all the companies out there, minus just a few that are, but doing major television. Each one, the way I feel is if what I'm teaching you, you could survive at either one. You
hmm
could survive at any of them. It's not just a niche. Like there is a niche in wrestling. You know how this is. Like
hmm
things catch on, spots catch on. It's the same with us when we were running around. Um, but what I'm teaching and what I'm professing and promoting and showing you in ring, you'll be able to work anywhere. You will be able to work anywhere.
Is it like an open gym? Do you have classes or like six
I'd
week?
ra- Well, I decided that I wouldn't be able to give you all that I'm looking to give you by scrunching it together.
hmm
So it's a 14-month term. 14 months, the tuition will cover all that in 14 months. And in 14 months, if you're a brand new wrestler, then I should hopefully have you graduated by that point. If you come in, you give me your time, and you have and again, it's aptitude,
hmm
but you should have all the tools by that point where I could say, you've got my stamp of approval.
hmm
Like the internationals, like I have a great guy that used to be at the PC. He's coming over on just a student visa, but he's gonna come train soon. He's only gonna be here for a few months at a time, so I can accommodate that. So I will rush those classes in. Maybe I'll do some extra private one-on-one sessions with them. I do offer that. I do offer one-on-one sessions for someone that, and I had actually a couple yesterday. So I was in the ring 2 3 times yesterday, but to come in for a couple hours, stretch a little bit, warm up. Hey, let's get right to the point. What are you working on? Eventually, really, what it turns into is us wrestling a little bit, talking,
hmm
getting more. For the less experienced person, I'm going to give you that flavor and help you out with movement and just certain things and certain ways you weren't trained, and just again regurgitating what I know or what I feel. Let's fix your lockup. Let's fix this. Here's a little British thing I know. Um, or for, like I said, the international or a short term. Maybe you're coming on your summer break over here for, I have a couple of weeks. Okay.
hmm
Well, let's supplement that. And I could be in here these days with you, along with training at night.
hmm
I'm looking to build machines. I want to build wrestling machines. I want to build what we were talking about, the early Ring of Honor. We were
hmm
all machines, man. We were all machines. When we ran the Steel Domain way back when, we were big on drills, but we weren't even, our brains weren't even working for drills. It was a lot of athleticism. But now my brain is really working with the, like, just little nuances of what makes us watch wrestling. When a Bret Hart takes a turnbuckle a certain way,
hmm
when Mr. Perfect or Shawn Michaels takes, don't neglect the buckle. This ring, we should respect it. We should always respect it. And also with the wrestling, like I am pushing to suspend disbelief and realism. I want more realism in our product is what I'm looking to show and produce out of my school.
Hmm.
So again, advanced, sure, come on in. Everyone's coming in. Eventually, I get to the point that I will split classes up on days. But for now, I want to get everyone in because everyone can learn from everyone. You
Yep.
can learn from someone. I've locked up with plenty that are of lesser time in the business than me. They're green. They're more green than I am, and it helps me learn because that's really what's helped me learn coach a person is because I had to lock up. Oh yeah, and I learned to direct, and then I already before I get locked up with the next person, I know how to direct them, move them around. That will help you out tremendously because there aren't that many times you're going to get in a ring. Sure, a certain status, but even so, like if you look on Major League Television, you're going to have one that's been working quite a long time and another that hasn't. So we've got to meet somewhere.
Hmm.
So let's head that off at the pass and get you in that mindset first.
I appreciate the length that the training is because the normal is what 3 weeks battle royal, then you're a pro.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously an aptitude factor sometimes,
Hmm.
but I think that's a good amount of time to get somebody prepared and ready for this industry.
Hmm.
And again, even if you've been training somewhere, I want to again, I want to polish you and make you I want to make you a machine.
Hmm.
So if you're ready for that, yeah, I mean, I was known for my cardio at the performance center. I was known for my cardio. We have the famous Ace Reno drill, which is Steve Carino and I just kind of made a tweak on a drill, and it'll kill you. It'll kill you, but it's applicable. All my drills are applicable to an in-ring contest
Hmm.
because I don't believe in just doing something just to do it. Maybe some of the opening bumps and stuff you learn, but a handstand bump feeds right into doing a snapmare. It's much the same. So these type things, like I don't do anything just to do it. Just it.
Hmm.
There's a reason. There's a reason for the season. Iceman King Parsons.
Where can they reach out to you at to come to the school?
Aces of Steel on Instagram has all my links there in the link tree. There's the Foundation of Pro Wrestling, which is also on Instagram. The website is foundationofprowrestling.com. I had to put it in front of me because I always goof it up. Um, it's the Foundation of Professional Wrestling, but foundationofprowrestling.com has all the information there. We'll kind of give you the little story. If you click on it, you'll see my story with Harley, that I've branded it with him, my relationship with him, why I've done this. He means so much to me. And when you go back and watch some of the things that he did in his career to help move this industry along, like I want to give back with his name and keep his name prominent in this world and not just a legend's nod every now and again. I want him out there prevalent, showing everybody just carry that on. I want his name carried on, and I want him to just be still just a name that we all talk about and kick around in this day in 2024.
I couldn't agree more. I just want to say thank you for taking the time out today. Thank you for what you've done for professional wrestling and what you continue to do,
Well,
sir. It's been an honor.
thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time to talk.
Appreciate if I can ever do anything for you, promote anything, please let me know.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.